Welcome everyone to yet another edition of Metaflow Office Hours. We have two amazing presentations lined up for today. Our first presentation today is from Emily Ekdahl. Emily is a senior machine learning engineer at Vouch Insurance. And Vouch Insurance, the company, provides business insurance for technology companies, which is pretty cool. She has led the development of AI and LLM technologies in production at Vouch. She's developed classification and document AI solutions for document-intensive processing. And prior to that, she has worked at several companies like Palmetto, Fetch Rewards, Otis, etc., focusing on data engineering and machine learning. Emily has a master's science degree from Northwestern University. Emily, welcome to Metaflow Office Hours. Over to you.
Thank you. All right, so we're really excited to be here, and thank you for having us, and thank you to all my colleagues for joining as well. And I'm just going to quickly pop open my presentation. All right, just a sec. It's not coming up, the one I expect to see. All right, so I'm going to just share my desktop, and you all let me know if the resolution works. Okay. Can you see everything as expected?
Yes.
Okay, great. So first, I just want to say thank you to Metaflow and Outer Bounds for building a fantastic project and for such great community support. So I really enjoyed developing in Metaflow, and I also took the Uplimit class and found the transition from the class to the community to be really smooth and really welcoming. So you talked a little bit about Vouch Insurance. We're particularly focused on supporting innovators and providing business insurance for tech startups and other kinds of startups, not just SaaS startups, to be clear. In terms of business problems, we're interested in the application of machine learning and AI to risk classification. That's key in the underwriting business. We're trying to assess risks and understand out there in our appetite to insure. And then also insurance is a document-intensive business. So there are a lot of different documents that contain really, really valuable and useful information to us, both documents in terms of our business transactions, but also things out there on the web and on the internet that we want to make sure we grab and extract information from to help us better understand our customers. So in terms of our setup, we started with the batch Terraform template, and we made some extensions. So for the most part, we have what you see here, but we made some improvements in terms of like using AWS Cognito and also just securing things. And I'm wondering, Connor, would you be open or willing to talk a little bit more about how we extended the project in that way?
Yeah, sure. So I think we forked the Terraform module to just add the ability for users, Vouch users, to sign in via Gmail at the ALE level. So I use Cognito for that. And I think there are just some various changes required to kind of support that at the back end as well.
Yeah, so thank you. And that's for the most part what we have there. And then just to kind of explain to you how we're using Metaflow. Apologies for the resolution on this image, but I think you all can see what we're trying to accomplish here. Okay, so our stack, we're a modern data stack company. So you'll see a lot of the usual suspects, dbt, Snowflake, Postgres databases. The thing that is different in this case is that we use Metaflow. So we start by using Metaflow to prepare our data transformations that are run in dbt with Metaflow. And then once we've got that data prepared, we send it out, not exclusively to OpenAI, but that was the first, like many folks, that was like the first thing we tried. So we're doing a number of different kinds of predictions based on that data. And then we return those predictions, and like many of you are familiar with, when the LLM sends something back, it often still needs a fair bit of work. So then we use the Metaflow pipelines to do those additional transformations to enforce our, when the output parsers fail or don't work entirely as expected, we enforce those transformations, and then we write those predictions to the database. So we put in front of Metaflow a fast API instance that allows us to serve those predictions that we have. And then we also wrote an SDK to make it really easy for our product engineers to integrate and to like retrieve those predictions with a couple of lines of code. And then those predictions, you can see also get reverse ETL back into the data warehouse to make it easier for us to report on how well they're working. I'll pause here. Does anybody have questions about this?
Okay. I have a couple of questions, but anyone else on the call, feel free to jump in.
I'd love to know more about like when and how the workflow gets executed. So like how often are you making predictions, and kind of how is that tied to the business use case?
Yeah, sure. So for our risk classification use cases, we can run those pipelines every hour, and it checks to see if there's anything new that it needs to pick up, and it runs those workflows. For the document AI workflows, those will be kind of on an as-needed basis, or as soon as the documents hit our services, then we kick off the process. Yeah, so
Thanks.
yeah. Just a little bit of information on scale. So we are a startup, right? So we're talking terabytes or hundreds of terabytes, maybe in like a set of interested in feature engineering on top of. I ran those numbers really quick this morning, so I don't know the size of like our entire data collection. That's more just like the set of tables that I was interested in. We're typically dealing with structured and semi-structured numeric and text data, but we also have, again, those documents, usually PDFs, but not always. And then the other piece that I think one of the interesting things or valuable things or lessons we've learned, and I know some of the folks that made core contributions to our project are here, so they can feel free to submit, but we really enjoyed and felt like the AWS batch Terraform template was really great for getting us up and running and into production. Like nothing beats that. I think as our project matures, we realize that what we probably need is event-driven pipeline. So I know there is an example, but it'd be nice to have like a comprehensive example, because when you read it, it says, oh, here's an example, but we're missing this, this, and that. And then the other thing that I'd be curious about, just to hear how other people have handled this, is just like thinking about local dev across many folks' computers and across like issues with Mac AMD. We eventually came to putting Metaflow inside a container just to try to insulate ourselves from those problems. But it's not without its quirks. So I'm curious, or would be interested to hear how other folks have handled those problems. But those are some things that we kind of observed while we were developing. But in general, like it's been really easy to work in the project, and yeah, and I found it valuable. I'm curious, like some of the core folks, like Connor, Sam, Shuyu, Nikki, if you have anything to add in terms of like things that you learned while developing or things that you wish you had.
Hi, yeah, I'm Sam. I've worked with Emily a bunch in Metaflow, and specifically, I've done a ton with the Netflix Metaflow extension and Micromamba, and found that to be, I learned a ton about Micromamba, just the fact that it existed first off, and then also quite a bit about the internals. It's pretty great. I think some of course, but recent releases have definitely made it better. So keep it up.
Cool. That's good to know. Just on the packaging front, a few months ago, there's also a new @PyPy decorator or @PyPI decorator. So that could be another option that you can explore. And then for some of the event-driven stuff, there is a fair bit of documentation on how you can get stuff done, especially when you're running on Kubernetes, because then we leverage a bunch of other Kubernetes native or other Kubernetes projects for doing a bunch of event-driven, triggering of flows based on either events webhooks or have kind of sort of connecting one flow to another and things like that. Yeah, we can follow up on that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we were really excited about the pipeline now, so we read it with with a lot of interest for sure. But what other questions can we answer?
Yeah, I have one question just about your use of OpenAI. So I'm guessing you use the OpenAI APIs through through the pipelines or in the pipelines to make calls to OpenAI and then get back responses. Are there any special things that you have to do to kind of sort of optimize for that? Especially optimizing for cost, optimizing for latency, things like that?
Yeah, well, we use LangChain to make those calls. I think
Yeah.
for what's fortunate about these pipelines is that they only run every hour, and typically the amount of data we have does not overwhelm the pipeline at that cadence. So I think I put some longer timeouts on those steps, but otherwise, I think we haven't run into some of the problems of scale maybe that others might in those circumstances. Basically, I had to do this. I go and do this thing where I check and see if I already have a prediction to try and really narrow down the amount of work because all those calls are expensive. So trying to manage the amount of work the LLM needs to do.
Got it. Okay.
And there's like token management steps, but I bet that Eddie has all that in his content as well. Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Shu, did you have another question?
No, go ahead.
I don't want to cut you off. Yeah, I was curious that also you mentioned kind of the end user's experience or like the product engineer's experience and trying to make a more consistent environment for people, whether they're on a Mac or whatever kind of CPU they have, for example. What does it look like from that person's point of view to like use the containerized Metaflow access point that you mentioned? Is it like Docker desktop, or what do I have to do to get access to that environment?
Yeah, so there are actually two paths. So the one path, if you're actually a developer in the project, is you run, Docker Compose build, Docker Compose up, and it spins up the entire service. So the pipeline, the API, so you have everything running, the databases, et cetera. If you are an SDK user, and Sean was one of our really flexible guinea pigs and one of our early SDK users, that is, you don't necessarily have to run the project because SDK points at the dev instance. And so you should only have to use the SDK. So you bring it in as a package and then just drop it in your code. I don't know.
Nice.
Is there anything SDK users want to add to that? Yeah, that's how it works. So yeah, it's a pretty standard Docker Compose workflow from that perspective.